The morning sun spilled across the crowded city park like liquid gold, warming the cold metal benches and glinting off the quiet lake. It was the kind of peaceful day people dreamed of, the kind that promised small miracles. Yet in the middle of that beauty, something happened that made strangers stop, hold their breath, and witness a moment that would stay with them for years. When she softly admitted that she was in a wheelchair and apologized for being an inconvenience, the single father standing before her did something so unexpected that the entire park seemed to pause in stunned silence. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human compassion, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Stories of Healing. Your support helps spread real stories that remind us the world still holds goodness. Late morning sunlight filtered through the trees as Armand Qureshi pushed a worn stroller down the narrow park pathway. His little son, Sammy, sat inside, gripping a toy airplane with the fierce concentration only a child could possess. Armand's shirt clung slightly to his back in the growing warmth, and there were faint shadows under his eyes that no amount of rest seemed able to erase. Life had not been gentle with him. Ever since his wife passed away 2 years earlier after a sudden illness, every day felt like an uphill climb he had to manage alone. He worked night shifts at a small repair shop and spent his mornings caring for Sammy, trying to balance grief, exhaustion, and responsibility in a world that rarely paused to help. Despite everything, he had made a promise to himself that Sammy would grow up surrounded by kindness, not bitterness. That promise was what brought him to the park every morning, even when sleep called louder than sunshine. He wanted his son to see laughter, hear birds, and believe that life still held beauty. Across the park, beneath the shade of an old jacaranda tree, sat a young woman named Ria Azad. Her wheelchair faced the open path, and a canvas tote bag rested on her lap, filled with sketchbooks and colored pencils. She had positioned herself there carefully, hoping the shade would keep her comfortable and the open view would let her draw people passing by. Art was the one thing that made her feel free, even when her body refused to cooperate. After a spinal injury from a car accident 3 years earlier, her world had shrunk to sidewalks and ramps, to careful planning and cautious movements. What hurt most wasn't the physical pain, but the invisible wall of hesitation she felt from others. People were kind but distant, sympathetic but unsure. Invitations faded, and over time she learned to expect very little from strangers. That morning, however, she had gathered her courage and decided to sketch outdoors again. She watched families pass by, children running with unfiltered joy, and elderly couples walking slowly with linked arms. The simple scenes filled her with both warmth and a quiet ache. She missed being able to walk freely, to chase moments without calculating accessibility or assistance. Still, she drew what she saw, capturing fragments of happiness on paper. Armand noticed her when Sammy's toy airplane slipped from his hand and rolled across the path. It stopped gently against one of the wheels of Ria's chair. Armand hurried forward, apologizing for the small interruption. But when he reached the toy, he saw the sketches on her lap. They were delicate, full of life and emotion, capturing the park in a way that made everything look softer and more meaningful. For a moment, he forgot his fatigue and simply admired the artwork. Ria, used to people glancing briefly and moving on, felt a flicker of nervousness. She sensed his attention and assumed he might be waiting for her to move, so he could retrieve the toy. With quiet embarrassment that had become routine in her life, she explained gently that she was in a wheelchair and might be in the way. The words came out almost automatically, shaped by years of feeling like an obstacle rather than a person. She expected him to nod politely, take the toy, and leave. Instead, something changed in the air. Armand did not rush. He did not offer a quick, dismissive smile. He crouched down beside the fallen toy and then sat on the grass nearby, as if time had suddenly become abundant. He studied her sketches with genuine admiration, not the forced politeness she had grown accustomed to. The morning breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers as he carefully picked up the toy airplane and placed it back in Sammy's small hands before settling comfortably on the ground, as though he had nowhere more important to be. People walking by began to notice. A few slowed their steps, curious about the quiet scene unfolding under the jacaranda tree. What happened next surprised them all. Armand gently lifted Sammy from the stroller and sat him on the grass beside Ria's wheelchair. Then, with a calmness that felt almost ceremonial, he folded the stroller and placed it aside. He remained seated on the ground, looking up at her rather than down, leveling the physical difference between them without making a show of it. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried a profound message. She was not an inconvenience. She was someone worth meeting at eye level. Rhea felt a sudden, unfamiliar warmth in her chest. No one had ever done that before. Most interactions with strangers were brief and polite, carefully navigating around her chair. But this man had chosen to sit in the grass, to pause his day, to treat her presence not as an interruption but as an opportunity. The sincerity in his eyes held no pity, only respect. As the minutes passed, the park's usual noise softened around them. Sammy giggled softly as he played with the toy airplane, occasionally glancing up at the sketches with fascination. Armand's attention remained focused on the drawings, his expression thoughtful. Though no formal conversation unfolded in traditional dialogue, the exchange of glances, gestures, and shared stillness spoke volumes. He admired the details in her work, the way she captured movement and emotion. She, in turn, observed the tenderness with which he cared for his son, the quiet resilience etched into his face. Over the next few days, their paths crossed again. Each morning, Armand found a reason to pass by the jacaranda tree. Sometimes he brought extra tea in a small thermos and placed it gently beside her tote bag without ceremony. Sometimes he helped reposition her sketchbook if the wind threatened to flip its pages. Always, he sat on the ground, ensuring they shared the same level, the same space. Slowly, a silent understanding grew between them, one rooted not in obligation, but in mutual respect. Rhea's life began to shift in subtle ways. She started arriving at the park earlier, eager to capture the golden morning light and the small moments of connection that now filled her days. Her sketches grew more vibrant, infused with renewed energy. She began to draw Armand and Sammy often, capturing the father's steady patience and the child's innocent joy. Through her art, she found a way to express gratitude she struggled to articulate. Armand, too, felt a change. The weight of loneliness that had settled on him since his wife's passing began to lift. He discovered comfort in the quiet companionship beneath the jacaranda tree. It wasn't a replacement for what he'd lost, but it was a reminder that new connections could still form, even after profound grief. Watching Rhea transform the world into art reminded him that beauty could emerge from pain, that brokenness did not erase worth. Weeks turned into months, and what began as a simple act of kindness evolved into something deeper. One bright afternoon, Armand arrived with a small wooden easel he had repaired and polished during his night shifts. He placed it carefully beside Rhea's wheelchair, adjusting its height so she could paint more comfortably outdoors. The gesture drew attention from nearby park visitors, some of whom paused to watch. They saw the care with which he set it up, the quiet pride in his expression as he stepped back. It was not a grand display, but a deeply personal offering. Word spread among regular park visitors about the man who sat on the ground, so a woman in a wheelchair would never feel looked down upon. Strangers began greeting Rhea with warmth rather than hesitation. A local cafe owner offered to display her artwork. A small community formed around the simple space under the jacaranda tree, built on shared respect and compassion. What started as one unexpected moment of understanding rippled outward, touching lives beyond their own. Rhea's confidence blossomed. She accepted the cafe owner's offer and soon saw her sketches framed on warm brick walls where people admired them daily. The recognition filled her with a sense of purpose she had nearly lost. Armand attended the small exhibition opening with Sammy, standing quietly at the back, pride shining in his tired eyes. He did not seek acknowledgement, but those who knew the story understood the role he had played in her renewed journey. If this story has begun to touch your heart, take a moment to engage with this video. Like it, share it with someone who needs hope today, and let us know in the comments how kindness has changed your life. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive.